up and all those types of stuff in. And so I'm glad you could make it back again. Thank you again for all the prayers and things. Do pray for Cody still. He's still out in the fire someplace. I'm pretty sure his phone is dead because I can't see where he is right now. But do not only, of course, it's more on our minds because our son is there, but anytime this kind of stuff happens, pray for all the responders, pray for the people there, pray for if there's any houses around and all that kind of stuff. I mean, God's hands of protection be upon them and give them all them strength and endurance as they go through all this. But don't forget the announcements. Wednesday night we have church at 6 o'clock, and then in a couple of weeks we have VBS August 8th through 11th from 1 to 4. So we're looking forward to that. And pretty soon, I do have flyers. I didn't mention it this morning, but I do have flyers back there to pass out to kids. If I need more, I can always print some more. I think there's 25 back there. So we're looking forward to all of those types of things. Thank you to those who already signed up to bring stuff and already talked about helping out and things. Thank you so much for that. Let's go ahead and pray, and we'll jump into our worship service. To God, thank you for all you've given us. Thank you for this time that we can come and worship you as we again sing, as we again look into your word and study it, as the Holy Spirit speaks to us. I pray that we will listen and draw closer to you. Let me just now pray. Amen. Aren't you glad that we don't have to put our trust in anything but Jesus? That, that if we say, well, the life is good because the economy is good. Well, life is good because my investments are good. Life is good because of this person or that person. I'm just glad that we can put our trust in Jesus. This old hymn says, "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus." "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust his cleansing blood, and in simple faith to plunge me neath the healing cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Yes, 'tis sweet to trust in Jesus, just from sin and self to cease, just from Jesus simply taking life and rest and joy and peace. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. songwriter, the last line, oh, for grace, trust him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust thee, precious Jesus, Savior, friend. And I know that thou art with me, wilt be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. The last verse starts off by saying, I'm so glad I learned to trust him. Boy, aren't you glad that we can go to bed tonight, not have any worries at all because we've learned to trust him. But it also says, I'm glad I learned to trust him, which means we have to be taught. That's why the disciple said, I believe, but help thou my unbelief. The last line says, oh, for grace to trust you more. And as God puts us in places and trials and situations, but we have to trust him more. And we can trust him because the title of this next song is so true and just said, God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. God is so good. God There's a group that I used to listen to, still do. It's called Legacy Five. It's a Southern type of quartet. The piano player makes five. When the group started, the piano player was named Roger Bennett. That was his name. He went through two um, battles of cancer. God healed him physically from one, and the ultimate healing with the other bad battle of cancer. The guy who took his place, he wrote a song or sang this song that basically says, "In my life, God's been good." There's really no other words that I could think of to say, but just God's been good. And I'm glad that we serve a good God. We cannot look back on anything in our lives and say, well, God wasn't good there. Yep, in that area, nope, God was just mediocre there. No, everything that we look at, God is good. He always has been and always will be. Our outlook on what he does may not be good, but he's always good. And, and I've mentioned this before, even before my mother passed away, and I've other dealt with other people dealing with the same thing, is that God gives us grace to go through every part of our life. I think of Cheryl. Every time that I went to visit her, she's positive. How can you do that? I mean, how can you be bedridden on oxygen? And it's because God gives her grace to go through those trials. As I read my mom's journal, good handwriting, and then all of a sudden it's like a little kid writes in the journal. I'm like, how can you still say, in my finite mind, in my earthly mind, people will look at it and say, how can you still say God's good? Look at you. But everybody who's gone through trials, even us who've gone through trials, say, no, God's good. It doesn't matter what I go through, what I feel. Now, Satan will say, as he did to Eve, see, God's just a bad God. God is keeping this from you. He doesn't want you to eat the fruit because he's not really a good God. No, he gives us things, everything, and everything that we can say is he's just a good God. Let's take our Bibles, please, and turn to 2 Timothy. It would be a while before we get there, but that's where we would start. A couple of Sundays ago, I preached a message on Sunday morning from Acts chapter 20, verses 22 through 24. The idea was this, that, turn this down a tad bit, Tiff or Caleb, just a tad bit, it's a little bit of ringing on this end. Is it ringing out there? Good. So maybe it just may be these monitors here. Do you know how to turn those on? Off? Down? If not, I'll call Caleb up here. He can do it manually. All right. We're teaching sound system 101 on the fly. Cody, we miss you. But and so Paul is in his missionary journey, and by now, every place that he has been, he's been attacked. He's been, and for lack of better words, they don't like him. They want him out. But yet he still goes back. He still says, I'm going to go here to preach the gospel. Nothing was going to deter him. That was the idea of the message, because we were looking at the thought of the expectations of what a child of God should do or should be. An expectation of a child of God should be, because their God is so big, because their God is so good, they should never give up. They should always go on. They should always fight. And so we preached a message on that, basically saying, every day keep going on. And what is your decision when that trial comes? When you are hit with bad news, when that Mack truck comes, when all of a sudden life is going well and then wham! Have you seen those cartoons that they're just running, they hit the wall and they fall backwards? No, everybody has had days like that. All of a sudden, boom! Or you're walking, you step on the rake hits you in the face. The cartoons that happens. That's what happens in life sometimes. Things are going well, then all of a sudden, wham! Something happens. What do we decide to do? Do we keep on going? How do we do that? We talked about that 2 Sundays ago. So I'm going to dovetail off of that and look at this thought, hindrances to going on. What are some things to be aware of? How many of you have ever felt lonely before? You know, boy, we can experience that with the prophet who said, I'm all alone, God. There's nobody out there but me. And he's like, no, 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 no. And he tells them there are a multitude of people. Sometimes we get that way. And we're like, is it worth it? Is it worth the pain? Is it worth the suffering? Um, I'll probably give you several quotes from my mom's journal. It's not up there. But she wrote this. She went through, we mentioned she went through the hyperbaric chamber. Anybody know what a hyperbaric chamber is? It's pressurized. The first time it was used, this girl was stuck in a well, almost lost her leg. It was black. They put her in it, and it brought life back to the leg, that type of thing. That's what a hyperbaric chamber is. So my mom went in there to hopefully help with the cancer. It's a 2-hour process. And it's like she said, when you go in it, you're underwater and keep going lower, lower, the pressure that's in there. But she was able to bring a movie to watch in those 2 hours. If you know my mom, then you would know that what I'm about to say is just like my mom. So she brought Christian movies like Facing the Giants, those types of movies. And the nurses and doctors who are in there cannot leave. They have to watch mom all 2 hours. So therefore, she was making the doctors and nurses listen to the gospel. She played God's Not Dead at least once, if not more than that, just so they had to hear the gospel. You know, and every time she would go in, and it caused her much, much pain. One time she couldn't go all the way down, couldn't finish it because there's too much on her ear, too much on her head. And so in the end of her, part of her journal, it said this: my suffering may save others because of the gospel I was going through. And I'm like, what an outlook. Because she would be crying because of the pain, but what an outlook. You know, no doubt Satan is saying to her in her ear, as he does us, just stop. Why give the gospel? Just focus on your pain, focus on you, focus on your miserable life, and let other people just feel sorry for you. Why do you care about other people? Just care about yourself. That's what Satan does. That's the hindrance to going on. That's the hindrance to know what I'm just going to live for me. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse number 10. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse number 10. As soon as I find it. Timothy, well, Paul says this to Timothy, 2 Timothy, not 1 Timothy, 4 and verse 10. Nope. Maybe it is there. Hold on, I don't know where I am. Yes, it is 2 Timothy 4:10, sorry. He says this: for Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia. For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world. What does that say that Demas was doing at one point? He was with Paul, ministering with Paul, preaching the gospel, but all of a sudden he stopped. He said, I'm done. I'm choosing this present world. I'm choosing to live for them. I'm choosing, as 1 John 2:15 says, love not the world. So I'm going to choose that instead of following Christ. What was the hindrance there, and what is the hindrance in our lives? I believe it's this: the lion of an enemy. We have an enemy that is a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. How many of you have ever played sports before? That's not before. I have a very short memory. Play sports. How many of you have ever won in a game playing sports? Yay, me. How many of you have ever gotten off the bus or onto the field? I love watching Little League Baseball. When I go out to Coos Bay, there's that field, I forget what it's called. They were playing baseball the other day. I just wanted to go and watch them. I played it for years. I love Little League Baseball. I remember thinking as a kid, I would get up to um, the home plate, and I will look at the pitcher's mound, and there would be this dude who was twice my size, throwing the ball twice as hard as I can. I'm like, oh boy. I thought to myself, I hope he doesn't hit me with the ball. That's what I'm thinking. It's going to hurt. And I will look at the other team sometimes and think, boy, we can't beat them. There's just no way. Have you ever, don't answer this out loud, this is a rhetorical question. Have you ever looked at our spiritual enemies sometimes and said, there's no way I can beat him? If you have, you would be right. There's no way. In and of myself, I cannot say no to temptation. I don't have the strength inside. That's why it says, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ. He's the one who strengthens me. He gives me the escape. I trust in him. It says in Matthew, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. Only if we take his yoke, give him our burdens, casting all of our care upon him, for he cares for us. He has never intended us for carry that load. He's always saying, I will take that for you. But the enemy says, no, 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 God's a mean God. Look what he did to you. What happened to Job? Nothing much. Nothing, just lost everything. And then this is a whole nother subject, I don't have time for tonight. Then his wife says, honey, just curse God and die. He did not call he did not call her a fool. He said, you are acting like a foolish woman. I believe that she was sincere in heart. Well, looked at Job and said, boy, he's suffering. I can't stand my husband to suffer. I know that if he curses God, God's going to strike him dead in his suffering. So she said, just curse God and die. And then his three friends come over and said, what sin did you do? Boy, Job. But what did the Bible say? Job said, God gives, God takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job chapter 1, Satan said, I bet I can make him turn on you. And God says, you can try. Do anything you want, but don't take his life. And in Job it says, not one time did Job blaspheme or turn his back on God. What did the lion of the enemy want him to do? Just quit. Just throw the white towel in every day. We are facing an enemy that says, just stop. Look at this in your life. Why would you not just stop? The second thing is this. Go to Joshua chapter 14. We're talking about hindrances to going on. Joshua chapter 14, verses 6 through 12. Joshua 14 and verse number 6. Then the children of Judah came unto Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and the Kenizzite, said unto him, Thou knowest the thing that the Lord said unto Moses, the man of God, concerning me and thee in Kadesh Barnea. 40 years old was I, when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to espy out the land, and I brought him word again, as it was in mine heart. Nevertheless, my brethren that went up with me, made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly follow the Lord my God. And Moses sware on that day, saying, Surely the land whereon thy feet hath trodden shall be thine inheritance, and thy children's forever, because thou hast wholly, again, followed the Lord my God. Twice. Wholly follow the Lord. Verse number 10. And now behold, the Lord hath kept me alive, as he has said, these 45 years, even since the Lord spake this word unto Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, lo, I am this day 85 years old, 85 years old. And yet, he says, I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. pause there. How many of you have ever met an 85-year-old who could work circles around some young bucks? I know a lot of people like that. Man, as my strength was then, even so is my strength now, for war both to go out and to come in. Now therefore give me this mountain. Wherefore the Lord spake in that day, for thou heardest in that day how the Anakims were there, and the cities were great and fenced. If so be the Lord will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. If I am telling the story to kids, I will use an old man voice and hunch my back. He is saying, 85 years old, he is saying, God promised me 45 years ago that I can have this. He says, I want that mountain. Not that one, not that one. I want that one. What was so special about this mountain? Who lived on this mountain? The Anakims. What was so important about the Anakims? They were giants. Giants. This 85-year-old said, don't give me the mountain of the dwarves or the elves. Give me the mountain of the giants. I want that mountain, and I'm with the Lord going to take care of them. At 85 years old. Where did Caleb find his strength? Not in his physicality, but in the Lord. He said, God will be with me. He will give me this mountain. The second hindrance to going on is simply this: the lack of energy. We just are, for lack of better words, tired for God. I've done this for many years. I'm just tired. I just kind of want to coast into heaven now. I mean, I worked and worked. There was a saying growing up that's not used as much now in the church world and the lingo that I grew up in, that children of God don't retire. They just keep going and keep going. If you are working for God, there is no retirement plan. Well, there is. It's called death in heaven. There is no, well, when I get to be 85 years old, I'm going to let all the young people serve God. I'm just going to sit back and watch. That's not how it works. There's a lack of energy sometimes, but I just don't have the strength. I just don't have the energy that I once had. Sometimes we just live in the past. We're living in the past. Well, back in the day, when I was younger, boy, we did this and we did that and we did that. Well, why aren't you doing that now? Caleb did not say, boy, if I was just younger. If they had not been wandering in the desert for 40 years, I'll be 40 years younger and I can take that mountain. He said, no, I'm going to take it now. We should not be living in the victories of the past. We should be living in the victories of the now, the present. The God of the past is the God of the present and the God of the future as well. Oftentimes, there's a lingering on others. I'm just going to trust others. I'm just going to wait and see what others do. If they want that mountain, I'll take something else. You know, it's no big deal. He said, no, I want that one. That's the one God's promised me. That's the one I'm going to take. He said, I don't care how old I am. I'm not in the dirt yet. There's a couple who my wife and I were friends with in Crawfordville. Their kids were hanging out with our kids, and we would go do stuff together, double date and stuff. And they are the type of people that on Sundays, because I preach all day Sunday morning, I preach on Sunday night, I like to have an afternoon nap just to kind of relax my mind, relax everything, kind of, just get ready for the next service. So we'll be eating with them sometimes on Sunday mornings for lunch. Say, hey, we got to go. I need my nap. And they're like, nap? You need a nap? And I'm like, you don't take naps? They said, no, we don't take naps. I said, why not? I said, what time do you go to bed? They gave me some absurd time. What time do you wake up? Some absurd. I was like, when do you sleep? We'll sleep when we're dead. I said, you're going to die sooner if you don't sleep. You know, the idea is sometimes we just know, I'm just going to trust others. I'm just going to depend upon others to do such things. There's a lack of energy that happens. I told my sister and my dad we were doing something last week in regards to getting everything ready for the memorial service and stuff, and we were out, and none of us slept much. Me and Dad either stayed awake half the night talking, or reminiscing, or watching a movie, or playing games, just chilling out. Me and Dad. By the end, me and Dad's like, boy, we stayed up too late, too many nights. I said, I need an energy drink. And Dad said, you don't want one of those. I said, I had one once in my life, never drink one again. I worked a triple shift. From 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in college, working in the kitchen for 12 hours. So me and my friend, halfway through, he said, don't you want an energy drink? I said, sure. I'm kind of getting a little groggy here. I still got about 7 more hours left. He got me one. I drank it all. I used to be more hyper than I am now. I used to be like, oh yeah, crazy. My head was spinning so fast. My mind was going so fast I could not comprehend some things. I stutter now. Every single word I said was a stutter. I'm like, I ain't never drinking one of those again. It was like, boy, I have too much energy. Wouldn't it be nice to have that much energy for Christ? Do you know who can give you that energy? Christ. It's not in and of us. Don't use a lack of energy as an excuse not to keep going. But number 3 is this. John chapter 21, verse number 3. John chapter 21, verse number 3. Simon Peter, this is the end of John. The end of Simon Peter's fishing days and the start of Simon Peter's preaching days. Simon Peter saith unto them, the other disciples, I go a-fishing. Pause there. Is there anything wrong with fishing? Well, no, there's not. No. Was Peter a fisherman, yes or no? Sure. Did he know how to fish? Yes. Is it a sin to fish? No. But what was the big deal about him saying, I go a-fishing? And then it says, they say unto him, the other disciples, we also go with thee. They went forth, entered into a ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing. Can you imagine being an expert fisherman and catching nothing? Like, that's what you do. They have nets. That is what he does. It'd be like me, it'd be like Michael Jordan or Stephen Curry, a famous basketball player, shooting all night long in a game and hitting nothing. 0 points. That's all that would be talked about on ESPN. Whoa, that doesn't happen. They are catching nothing. No doubt they are frustrated. The whole story, Jesus appears and says, cast your nets on the other side. And they're like, we done tried that. That's what I'd be thinking. We tried everything. What happened? They got a lot of fish. What did Jesus feed them when they got back to the land? Fish. Can you imagine Jesus cooking you fish? It's better than Gordon Ramsay, better than anything. It would be 5+ stars. Man, they were eating food that Jesus fixed. And then the story goes on. This is a conversation that Peter and Jesus had, right? We all know it well. When he asked him, Peter, do you love me? He says, yeah, I love you. Peter, do you love me? God, you know I do, getting on his nerves. Then he said a third time, do you even like me? That's the idea. Do you even love me as a friend? Forget the agape love, but do you even phileo? Do you even love me like a friend? He says, you know that I do. What does Jesus say? Feed my sheep, feed my lamb. He says, don't just say it, but act like it. You're going fishing when you should be feeding the sheep. You're doing this when you should have been doing ministry. Here's the idea. Here's the hindrance that keeps us from going on. The third one is this: the letdowns through expectancy. How many of you have ever been let down before in your life? Well, sure. Don't raise your hand or try not to respond facially. I don't really want to know. How many of you have ever been let down from a church, a preacher, or something like that? And you think, boy, man, of all people, I thought this. Been there, done that. I'm not going to go into detail, but there are more than once in my life, there was an assistant pastor in a church that we were in that did something that was, for lack of better words, highly illegal. And then some people were like, oh, what? How did that happen? How can we be so blind to who this person really is? And all of a sudden, Satan used that to say, well, if he can't live for God and he's a assistant pastor and a man of God, I don't know if I can. Sometimes there are letdowns. If we put our trust in men, what will always happen? We will be let down. But if we put our trust in God, there will be no letdowns. We have letdowns because we expect certain things. The first idea is this: what is now will always be. And that's just not true. What is now will always be. What I'm feeling now will always be. The ministry I am in now will always be. I will always be in this location doing this, serving God in this capacity, in this way, and that's not always the case. The friends that I have now, those will always be my friends serving God together. That may not always be the case. And if we get our expectancy on the ways of life, circumstances, I am the type of a person that I like the same thing over and over and over again. I like knowing what's going to happen. So when I pastored and somebody moved, I'm like, oh no, that chair is vacant now. They were doing this ministry. I got to start all over, find somebody else, train somebody else. Man, I like consistency. I like to know that this person does this people sing, and this does this, and they do that. And God's like, well, no. You are getting too used to, you're expecting things. You're not living in the power of God. You're living in the power of consistency. And saying over and over and over again. How many of you have ever driven from or to work after a shift? You've been tired. And you're like, I don't remember taking that turn. I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember I turned there. Yeah, we're all like that, right? Because you do something over and over again. That can become the way in the Christian life too. We lose the zeal. We lose the excitement of why we serve God. We've been let down somehow, some way. So the second thought is this: what I think should happen doesn't happen, so I'm let down. Well, I think God ought to do this. It didn't happen. Oh, man. I was teasing my dad when he was here, and I usually tease him pretty good. And when I was growing up, sometimes we just didn't have enough money. Um, and I always want to go to Chuck E. Cheese for my birthday, just once. My friends go to have parties. I want to. Anybody not know what Chuck E. Cheese is? It has a scary mouse there. That's all I know. But they have pizza and games. Oh, I want to go to Chuck E. Cheese with a party and friends and pizza and arcade games, get tickets, buy stuff. And then finally, on one of my birthdays, I'm expecting Chuck E. Cheese. I tell the story to Dad. He laughed. I said, do you know what I got that year? It wasn't Chuck E. Cheese. He said, hey, Stephen, so why do you like Chuck E. Cheese so much? Is it the pizza? Oh, I love pizza, Dad. It's okay. He said, what else do you love about Chuck E. Cheese? I said, the arcade games. I said, did you know, son, that we can buy pizza, bring it to the house? Like I can take it to the mall and play arcade games for a whole lot cheaper. I'm like, I want Chuck E. Cheese. That birthday was probably one of the best birthdays that I had. It was just fun. We just did different things. We had pizza. We laughed. All these types of things. But as a child, I was expecting Nikes, but got generic brand, right? And my expectation was I have to have this in order to be happy. If I don't get Chuck E. Cheese, my birthday's bad. If I don't get this, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way. God says, no, plans change. What I think should happen doesn't happen. What happens? What do you do? If you expect something and God says no, how do you respond to that? The fourth one and the last one is this. Jonah chapter 1. Jonah chapter 1. Verses 1 through 3. We all know that Jonah was never a carnal prophet. Always walked in the middle of God's will. Never say no to God. He was just on top of it every time. Verse 1 of chapter 1. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, son of Amittai, saying, pause there. Why do you think it says that the word of the Lord came unto Jonah? Because he wants the readers to understand this is not just a thought that Jonah had or a suggestion that Jonah was given. The word of the Lord came to Jonah for Jonah to respond to. The word says this, arise, Jonah, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. Verse number 3. But Jonah hastily ran to Nineveh. Well, of course not. We know the story. Jonah rose up to flee into Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. For all of us who understand the story and understand the Bible and how in the holiness of God, we think to ourselves, are you crazy, Jonah? It's like an older kid watches their younger sibling tell their mama, no, I won't clean my room. The older sibling thinks, oh, you're dead. Are you kidding me? Why does the older sibling say that? Because he's been there, done that. And he knew what happened. No, you're going to clean your room, but you ain't going to like it. You know? So we look back at it and say, are you crazy, Jonah? Jonah says, I'm fleeing from the presence of the Lord. We find out the reason why. Jonah didn't want them to repent. He knew that God would save them and didn't want them to be saved. So he went down to Joppa. He found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare thereof and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, again, from the presence of the Lord. You know as well as I do. Can we hide from the presence of the Lord? No way, no how. We as Christians, sometimes in our carnality, we think like kids. We say, can you see me, mommy? Yes. How? I can't see you. Anybody have a kid like that before? Yeah. You can see me? How's that possible? We think that because we can't see God sometimes, that he somehow doesn't see us. His eyes are everywhere, beholding the evil and the good. So he fled from the presence of the Lord. The fourth hindrance to going on, and the last one that we'll look at tonight, is this: the length of emptiness. I wonder, as I read verse number 3, but Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. I wonder how long he's been in that state. I wonder up until this point how long in his heart he's been kind of shunning God. or saying no to God, or not as close as he once was to God, or not as on fire for God as he once was. I wonder how much time went past that he could say and act out, I'm fleeing from the presence of the Lord. At some point, Christians sometimes get tempted with, just don't do it. Just flee from God's presence. Or we'll put it into kid version. Sometimes as a kid, I was tempted to run away from home. I would have plans. I wrote out how I would do it. Did I ever act upon that? No. Why? Because I knew my daddy would find me. And I knew it probably wouldn't be good when he did. I wonder how much time Jonah was devising a plan to flee from God. The emptiness that he had, the spiritual emptiness that he had. I wonder how long he had no walk with God. You know, one of the coolest verses in the Bible is that Enoch walked with God and was not. What do you mean? I mean, he just walked away, like to another country, kind of. He was gone. I heard a preacher say this once. He's walking with God. They're walking along and they're talking. It's the illustration that a pastor gave. They're talking. God elbows Enoch and says, hey, Enoch, we're closer to my house than yours. Let's just go on to my house. Like, wouldn't that be cool? Just walking with God, and he opened the front door to go into heaven. How cool would that be? He just is gone. That's the type of walk we all ought to have. What's the hymn we often sing, Sweet Hour of Prayer? Sweet Hour of Prayer. Oh, one of the verses says, how I long for that time with God. For me and God just to be alone. I remember as a kid, and my kids do this. Mom and Dad would be going out on a date. Me and Tiffany going out on a date. I would tell my parents, they would tell me, where are you going? We're going to eat. Why can't we come? And I try to say it nicely. We don't want you to come. This is me and Mommy. I want time just to talk to Mom. Why can't I be there? Because I've had enough of you. I want some time with Mommy. I want some time with just me and her to talk. Because you're always around me. You're always sitting in her lap. I can't talk about you in front of you. That's why we're going to eat, talk about you, Caleb. Oh, really? No. We just want to talk to Mom. Just to spend one-on-one time. How much do we long for just that one-on-one time with Jesus? I know you get tired of this. And if you do, I apologize. But I walked into my dad and Mom's house. Mom has. Have you heard a preacher say to get you a prayer closet, that term, prayer closet? Mom didn't have a prayer closet. She had a prayer room. It was her office. Sometime in the other house we were in, same thing. Sometimes she would be prostrate on the floor. Sometimes she'd be sitting there. Sometimes in her chair. Sometimes kneeling. Be all kind of Bibles, verses all over the wall that she typed out, print off, and just put it on the wall. I walked in there and I thought to myself, wow, what a relationship. What was the point of that room for my mom or for us, that place? Just to get away, and it's just me and God. No distractions, no things. Sometimes some people go to the beach, to a wooded area, to a park. I just need me and God. I don't want to hear grandkids, kids, phone, email. I just want, how long of time is there that emptiness? The emptier we are, the length of time there is, that's a hindrance to us going on. The question is this, and we're in with this question. What's keeping you, what's keeping me from going on or being excited about serving God tomorrow? It's been a long week. It's been a long day. I've got too much on my mind. I want to use that to keep you from being excited about tomorrow. We, I don't know if we sung this song here. I don't know about tomorrow. It may bring me poverty, but the one who feeds the sparrows is the one who stands by me. I am jumping up all the words. The idea is I know who holds tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow holds. It could be great poverty or the worst news in your life. Or you could win $1 million tomorrow. We don't know. And to be honest, I'm glad we don't know. But I am glad that God knows. So why shouldn't we be excited for serving God tomorrow? Well, you don't understand what's going on. That's just Satan saying, hey, just stop. Let's calm down. You are way too excited. My son gets that way. Caleb gets that way. You probably never seen him hyper, but that kid can get hyper. He was playing games. Cody's a mature man now. I miss his little boyness. We were all playing games. Papa, me, Cara, Cody, Caleb, Courtney was there. We're all just playing games. And Cody was as goofy as he was when he was a kid. I mean, just goofy. Just being a doofus. Just laughing different voices, making people laugh. And tears almost came to my mind like, I miss that kid. He was just goofy, excited. When's the last time we were that excited about serving God tomorrow? Oh, I can't wait. Tomorrow, I'm going to go to bed. Why is you going to Disney World? No. Why are you so excited? I can't sleep tonight. Why? I'm serving God tomorrow. When's the last time we've been that excited? I know what tomorrow, I don't care what comes. Nothing is going to stop me from going on and from serving God. Let's pray.